Of interest rates. You have charts on this. Take it away.
Yeah, Mika, we've been expecting inflation to continue to kind of moderate, ease down, provide more room for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates and give relief, of course, to consumers as well from rising prices. But last month we didn't quite get that. It wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't what we hoped for. Consumer prices actually rose. And we look at consumer prices, as you know, two ways. One, all of them, and the other when you take out food and energy, what we call core, which is this blue line right here. And core is running now at about 3.3%. It's gone up for 4 months in a row. It is the highest it's been in over a year. And so the moderating trend that we've seen for so long seems to have abated for now. And this is not lost on consumers. And this is very important because what consumers expect actually plays a meaningful role in what actually happens in inflation. And you can see here, consumers were expecting that when they look ahead a year, they expected higher inflation, and then they expected inflation to come down, 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 down. And look what's happened here. Consumer expectations for inflation have shot up, and consumers now expect inflation could be as high as 4.3% over the coming year. And again, that has a self-reinforcing quality, and so that makes it tougher as well for the Fed to bring down inflation.
So, Steve, another thing that impacts consumers is interest rates. What's the market saying?
Yeah, so when you have more inflation, it pushes up interest rates because people expect to get a return on their money. The Federal Reserve controls what we call shorter-term interest rates. This is the Federal Reserve's interest rate, and you can see they've cut it a couple of times. But what's also happened is the 10-year Treasury, the yield on the 10-year Treasury has gone up and up and up here since the election. There are really three things in the Trump policies that are worrisome for inflation. Number one, of course, are tariffs. We've talked a lot about tariffs and how they affect prices and can pay for by consumers. That hasn't taken effect yet, but that's a drag on inflation, a bad thing for inflation. The second thing is immigration. We've benefited from a lot of workers coming into the workforce, which has kept wage increases down a little bit lower than they might have been and helped provide economic growth. That may be coming to an end. And the third thing is that yesterday, the House Republicans unveiled their budget plan. They want to have massive tax cuts. They want to increase the spending, defense spending, and they have some vague ideas about cutting other spending, which they didn't detail. But on present course and speed, we're going to get a substantial increase in the deficit out of what's going on in Washington. And that's inflationary because it makes the economy grow faster, and the faster it grows above its potential, the more inflation you get. So all of that has led the market to predict interest rates to remain higher for longer. If you go back to even before the election, we thought the Federal Reserve would have its interest rate down to 3.7%. We're now looking at basically no more interest cuts this year, maybe one cut in December. And so interest rates stalling out is not a good thing for the economy, and especially for mortgage holders, because the 30-year mortgage is stuck up here close to 7%.
Well, okay. And finally, I guess the penny is not so lucky. Costly to make the penny. A penny for your thoughts.
Well, it could be lucky to hold because maybe there won't be so many anymore.
Right, okay.
So interestingly, the cost of making coins has shot up over the years. Inflation, the cost of the metals that go in them, and so forth. And one of the ones that's gone up the most is the penny, and it now costs 3.7 cents to make every penny. So the Treasury loses money on every penny it makes. It actually also loses money on the nickel, which costs 13.8 cents, and it makes some amount of money on the quarter and the dime. And so they've announced, and this is long overdue. I mean, you have to give credit where credit's due. The Trump administration has actually made a good policy decision. Maybe it's the only one, but they've made one, which is to eliminate the penny, save some money, and also consumers don't really use pennies that much. As you can see over here, they really don't use coins at all anymore, as much anymore. We've all gone electronic. And so usage of all these coins, production of all these coins has been going down, down, down. And yeah, when you eliminate the penny, the fear is that stores will round the prices up instead of down, a little bit of extra cost. But you know, Australia, Canada, all those other places that we think of as behind us are actually way ahead of us when it comes to eliminating the penny, because they did it years ago.
All right, let's pull back to the big picture about the economy, Steve. I want to get your take on a few editorials. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes this morning about Trumponomics and rising inflation. It reads in part this: does President Trump understand money? Not money as in cash, but the supply of money, the price of money as measured by interest rates and their impact on inflation. The answer would appear to be no, after Mr. Trump called for lower interest rates on Wednesday, the same day the Labor Department reported an increase in inflation for the third straight month. Perhaps the president wants the public to look elsewhere when assigning blame for rising prices as a political matter. An inflation revival may be the biggest threat to the Trump presidency. Mr. Trump was elected as voters reacted to inflation and falling incomes under Joe Biden. Real average earnings are flat over the last 3 months as inflation has bounced up. If this persists, Mr. Trump won't have a 53% job approval rating for long. And then this from Republican Senator Mitch McConnell. He has a piece this morning for the Courier. Courier Journal entitled "Kentuckians Can't Afford the High Cost of Trump's Tariffs." The former majority leader writes in part this, quote, "No matter our best intentions, tariffs are bad policy. Blanket tariffs make it more expensive to do business in America, driving up costs for consumers across the board. These aren't just abstract concerns. Broad-based tariffs could have long-term consequences right in our backyard. In Kentucky, local store owners are already hearing about their suppliers' prices going up. One estimate suggests the president's tariffs could cost the average Kentuckian up to $1,200 each year. Preserving the long-term prosperity of American industry and workers requires working with our allies, not against them. Trade wars with our partners hurt working people most. And the president has better tools to protect American workers without forcing our families and businesses to absorb higher costs." Steve Rattner, I'd love for you to respond to those two editorials. And you know, I think it's safe to say that Joe Biden left an economy that was moving in the right direction, was it not?
Yeah, and this is the interesting thing for Trump. Joe Biden did leave an economy moving in the right direction, but there was still work to do. The deficit is high, inflation is high, real incomes are rising a bit, contrary to what Mitch McConnell said, but nonetheless not at a rate that we want. And so unlike when Trump came in 2016, when we had very, very low inflation, he's got work to do, and the work, as I said, is in conflict with the policies he's espoused so far, particularly the tariffs. You know, I need to put a new roof on my house, and the guy said to me, "You better order these right now, because when those tariffs go into effect, the cost is going to go up 25% of those materials, because those shingles all come from Canada." So that's what we're looking at. But there are a couple of interesting conundrums here, because first, Trump is an easy money guy. Real estate guys are easy money guys. They like and they need low interest rates to finance their buildings. That's a large part of how they make money. And Trump doesn't really understand economic policy and monetary policy. And so he thinks the Fed should keep interest rates lower. He jawboned the Fed back during his first term. He has threatened to fire Jay Powell on many occasions and so forth. And you have that in conflict with what's going on in the Hill, where they're talking about larger budget deficit. Well, not talking about them. They're talking about cutting the budget deficit, but everything they're saying is pointing to larger budget deficits rather than smaller ones. And then, as I said earlier, the impact of less immigration on our labor force and what that's going to do to prices. So the Journal is right. Mitch McConnell is right. The Trump administration keeps talking about bringing down prices. He promised during the campaign to bring them down on day one.
Right.
And now they've got a set of policies that actually are certainly not going to make it better and arguably could make it worse.
Morning Joe, economic analyst Steve Rattner, thank you. And we didn't get to eggs. Jonathan